We talk about the idea of asset distribution planning and the relationship of that with accumulation mode. Talk about how that dynamic works together and how the pivots happen around that.
Yeah, so once again, it's like connecting the dots and making it relative to real people. So a lot of what we said before, it's basically just tying all this together. A lot of what we said before is the time horizons and the sequencing decisions matter. So you want to have your buckets of what's a long-term strategic decision or objective, what's an intermediate decision or objective, and what's a short-term tactical decision or objective. For you personally, the founder, and the business, if there's a business involved, or just you personally, the individual, if there's no business involved, and thinking about the paths that can get you there, not just immediately, but also 2 to 3 steps from now.
Very good, yeah. And I know we also talk about that whole idea of the distribution planning. We see it a lot, whether it's folks that maybe have the early exit. I know you've worked with some folks that have had their first exits in their 20s and early 30s. We see it with folks that may be in the professional sports or the entertainment spotlight where they may theoretically be done by 30. We now have to look at what is that distribution strategy going to be for them, anyone else that they care about in their circle, whether it be extended family or other causes they support. But that distribution cycle could be, even with a traditional retirement, a 20 to 30 year distribution cycle, or even as long as a 70-year distribution cycle. And
Right.
we have to plan for that. Kind of in the same way we talk about folks climbing Mount Everest, everybody's focuses on how I get to the top, but 80% of the accidents happen on the way back down, as the focal point hasn't been on necessarily how do we have a great descent strategy or distribution strategy in this case. Say, how long do we need to make it last and which people involved?
Yeah, exactly like you said with the Mount Everest analogy. I like that a lot. It's most people and most advisors even are very concerned with picking investments and trying to accumulate the assets and get the highest rate of return, get the most base, squeeze that last basis point out. But a lot of people don't focus on how or design how that money will flow back into their life. Because ultimately, the reason you're building your investments is to spend it in some capacity, whether it be on your lifestyle or long-term goals. And when you build that spending and distribution framework, you have to know the different accounts types that you have access to and how you're going to tap into those, in which order and under what rules, because things can change very rapidly if the timeline changes when you're taking the assets out, if the tax legislation has changed, inflation has changed, if the market is performing differently than expected. All those different things, you want to make sure that you have contingency plans for other places to pull assets out if something is not going according to plan elsewhere in the world, independent of what you're doing.
And as we've chatted before, that timing, again, everything from sequence risk to just the overall timing or tax treatment, oftentimes we're all going to have those moments in life where things don't align well. And so how punitive is the distribution strategy going to be when I have the least flexibility? And so that's something where we look at, to your point, a lot of folks will focus on rate of return only or their ROI, but we look at the liquidity, tax positioning, what optionality do you have so that you have maximum maneuverability. It's kind of like I go across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel to some places we have on the eastern shore of Virginia, and there is one way in and there is one way out.
Yeah.
And if one of those tunnels gets choked up, there's nowhere to turn around. That's something that we hate for folks to have, that kind of constricted movement, but let's design it so that you have maximum flexibility.
Yeah, and those are just all the risks for everyone. And then if you're a founder on top of that, you have to add in additional things as well, like your business liquidity, how you structure your compensation packages, your portfolio withdrawals. All those things need to be worked into a multi-year plan rather than just a one-off event that just happens upon you.
Absolutely. One last thing I know that you definitely focus on as well is how do we take sort of these very technical communications and get them into the client-ready communications? As obviously we see, even like on these kinds of communications, we use a lot of metaphors, a lot of how do we take the abstract and turn it into the concrete visualization. But talk a bit about how you get some of those technical details really client-ready.
Yeah, so internally, I'm working very often with some of the themes I already touched on, like building models, modeling expected value, creating scenarios to see how the different actions play out with each other, and risk decomposition. That's kind of what I'm working with internally. And then externally, it's helpful to group together all those objectives and recommendations and make one clear communication with some well-framed alternatives to the client that frame it so that, once again, we're planning with point B in mind. So we want to make sure that when we're communicating with the client, that we've translated a little bit to make it recognizable to them in terms of the things that they care about and the things that they want to achieve.
Very good. Well, Alec, definitely appreciate your insights on this and how you help our clients think through this wide range of different permutations that can play out in their life and how to kind of de-risk that, but also say how to be opportunistic at the same time and help anticipate that and help guide them in their decisions. So again, look forward to having you as part of our future conversations with our clients to share more about all the different ways that we can do the comprehensive types of planning, whether it's for entrepreneurs, families and family offices, folks that may be in that sports and entertainment sector, or just folks that are looking at their everyday lives and saying, hey, look, I need a structure and a plan around this that starts with the end in mind and design strategies to help it get there as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks.